afternoon. Welcome to another episode of my Yamaha Virago Cafe Racer project. My name is Scott McCutcheon of Sovereign Studios. Thanks for tuning in. I apologize that this is not going as fast as I wanted it to. It's taken me a long time in between videos to get updates out to you guys, and for that I apologize. One of the reasons I haven't really been able to do very much work on this bike, or haven't had the motivation, is simply because I've been maintaining the other bikes. My Buell is a 2006 and my CBR is a 2009, both of which are getting a little up there in years and miles, and they're starting to require more maintenance. So my Buell has been down, for the last month or two, getting some maintenance done on it. I went and replaced the tires and the brakes and the belt and the fluids, and did all the controls. Got new controls on both ends. And next up, I got to do the fork rebuild on that guy. Same thing over here. Both of these bikes are going to need their forks rebuilt soon. So I'm going to have that work to do. You can see this giant stack of tires here is also because I got my hands on this. This is the Mayflower 960, I think it is, 960 tire machine. It's the one with the bead blaster. That's like, I guess, what they call the eBay special tire machine. I didn't buy it on eBay. I went straight to the manufacturer, Mayflower, and bought it from them. They had the best price. And getting it shipped to my door with like the liftgate service, the dude literally backed the truck up to the edge of my garage, dropped the thing out, and dropped it right there with the pallet jack. Like I had to turn it 90 degrees, before I could unbox it and start using it. $1,300 maybe to get it right there, and then another $150 for the motorcycle clamps. Totally worth it, man. The number one feature here. There's three main features that make it really useful for doing motorcycle tires. Obviously, the first is the automatic bead breaker. You step on the pedal here, and that'll break the bead on the tire. The arm here is really nice. If you clamp it into the claws here, this arm here is really nice for getting the tire lips off. And then having the table be able to rotate makes that job a lot easier. And then of course the other main feature is like what they call the bead blaster, which is just a really fast way to dump air into the tire to help seat the bead. For the price, man, you can't beat that. Totally worth it if you got the space and the money to do something like that, because now you can pop these guys off whenever they get bad and do it yourself. If you own one bike, I guess it's not that big of a deal, to take your bike up to the shop and get them to swap the tires. If you want to get specific about what tires you have on your bike, sometimes you end up paying a little bit more for that privilege, and then you also have to take them to the shop to get them mounted. After which they charge you, $60 a tire, or whatever it is. To mount and balance the things. And you can do that on your own, when you're paying, basically $120 a visit to go get both tires on your motorcycle. Well, when you got four of them, it adds up quick. $1,300, $1,500 for the tire machine, and then you'll need a balancer of some sort. I got a manual one. That one works great. Today, what we're going to do, we're going to take a look at the Virago again, and we're going to get back in touch with its electrical system. When we last left off, the state of the electrical system is as follows. We have the primary ground point connection. It's currently disconnected. It goes to the battery, which is down under here. Here's the starter solenoid. It's currently disconnected, but is connected to the positive battery cables, which head out to this fuse box here. The fuse box is currently connected to the key on switch here, and what this all boils down to is essentially this wire and a series of fuses. Here's the main fuse and what will eventually become the headlight, taillight, ignition fuses and stuff like that. But the idea is you turn the key and we get a hot lead coming out here. That's actually good power. Turn it off, lose power. That's the basics of the electrical system. So today, the next step is to see what we're going to wire up next. My goal today is the taillight. Turn the key, taillight comes on. Based on the wiring diagram, you have your battery that obviously just goes off, to the frame as a grounding point, and it also has additional wiring that connects it to all the other parts across the vehicle. Most of these grounding points end up connecting to each other, even though many of them branch off and go directly to the frame. Some of these grounds, or many of these grounds, are all connected to each other. And we can see that here, where this was the primary ground spread throughout the wiring harness. And you can see here's a bunch of joints, here's a bunch more joints, where they all kind of like connect. And all the grounds end up, more or less connecting to the same point in the end. It really doesn't matter in terms of grounding where you put it, so long as it's in a place where it's got a stable connection to complete the circuit. So in the case of building a custom bike, you don't necessarily need to keep it at the same position that the OEM manufacturer had. For us, what we've already done, we've built our primary grounding point, and that's this wire right here. If you recall from the battery installation video, this is plugged directly to the negative terminal on the battery and just snakes out of the subframe here, and we'll plug it right up here onto this bolt. And that gives it a nice solid ground for the entire frame of the bike. It's clean, it's one install, it's easy to reach without any maintenance, like all I have to do is grab a wrench and pull that off without pulling out anything else. There's no other disassembly to power down the bike, which I really like. I think that's a good design. But to get the rest of the bike grounded, the rest of the parts, we're going to have to find a place on the frame to connect a grounding point, if not multiple grounding points. Okay? Unfortunately, on this frame, there's not like a ton of places to do that. There's not a lot of pre-threaded holes. Like maybe we could use these bolts here for the subframe. Maybe you could do something with the shock mount or on your subframe if you happen to be able to do that. But there's not really anything else around here. Maybe these, I guess. Maybe, but not really. So this is the one that I've chosen to end up using as a stock mounting point, without having to, drill in a new hole and thread a new hole directly into the frame. I figure we can go ahead and try and use this one. So this is the OEM ignition coil, which mounts right here. And you'll see we have another threaded hole down here, but I don't think we'll be able to use it because of the positioning of this. So we'll mount this here. And once the tank is mounted, there's a channel right here where the main harness would have gone, so we'll be able to use that space to include the rest of our wiring. In terms of building the ground, what I'd really like to do is end up with a single connection here that then branches out into, a connector that can then be used for the rest of the pieces on the bike. To facilitate that, what I think I'm going to do is I have these old battery cables from the OEM Virago. And what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to use this. You see I've already kind of like bent it into shape to more or less mount right here, and it'll wrap itself above the ignition module here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to cut this end off, and we're going to solder in some wiring offshoots that will help us build a grounding connector, and then we can wire in the accessories and everything into this grounding connector. And that ends up being what we're going to put together. And what that is 9 wires split up into this joint, and we'll end up using a 9-pin connector as the grounding connector. So let's solder this all up, shrink it, and be done with our ground. When all said and done, you'll end up with a big thick grounding joint like that. Not pretty, but it'll do the trick. We'll tap off these wires and turn it into a connector. And with all of our connectors in place, what we're going to do is slide on one extra piece of heat shrink tubing, so that when we plug this in, we'll be able to sort of butt it up and get a nice thick seal. And then we'll put the connector on. Alright, and there's our final grounding connector. So this whole thing will have a single point onto the frame. It comes out into a 9-pin connector, all of which will be grounds. I didn't have a extra piece of shrink wrap here to cover this, so I think what we'll do is we'll just wrap this with tape near the end, and that'll be the end of it. We have this extra 10th connector. If one day we decide to chop this off, we can turn that into an extra grounding point in case we need it. I don't think we're going to end up needing it. I think 9 is going to be enough. So yeah, I think that should do the trick. Kind of did all this off camera, but we'll go and do a quick walkthrough of what I just finished. If you look at the original Virago wiring diagram, you'll recall that we wired up our main switch and sent all the positive leads down to the fuse box. So in this case, 1 blue circuit, 3 tan circuits, and off to the main power and everything like that, which you can go check out the previous videos for. So switch all this down here down to the fuse box. So 1 blue, 3 tan. Here's your primary. And you'll see that I've now completed the blue circuit. So that blue circuit is a 10 amp fuse with the rest of the circuit coming back up through the nylon braid here, after which it exits here down off to this wiring harness here. And you may recall from a previous video where we had wired up the taillight, which has 5 leads: a red for the power, a black for the ground, green for the brake lamp, and 2 yellow wires for the left and right turn signals. So this 6-pin connector only has 5 leads in it, but we plug it into the harness here. You'll see I've only got 2 completed so far. This is the power that comes off the key, or it comes from the fuse box, and then off to the ground. The ground is going to be a little special on this bike. I don't know what originally mounted here, I'm not really sure, but now I'm using it as a grounding point. And this is the original battery cable, actually, that I mounted here as a single grounding point. And you'll see I left this on in case I want to do like a grounding expansion, but I fed this up under the ignition box to keep it, you know, nice and clean and hidden as best we can. That should give us a clean, centralized place to do all of our grounding. That way we kind of know we're using the same grounding points where necessary, and keep a good circuit on everything. So that'll be real helpful. Alright, and I thought we could go ahead and do the show off here. So we got key on, tail light on, right? Pop the key off and the light goes off. Looking good. Alright, so that about wraps it up for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed that. I'm really glad we were able to see some life come to the bike when we turned the key. So that's pretty cool. Next step is going to be getting the headlight done. So we'll talk about that in the next video and show you how we can get that to turn on when you turn the key. So that one's a little more complicated. It requires a relay. So you know, we'll actually do the step-by-step on that. Otherwise, I think this is a good start to the wiring harness, and hopefully we can get this moving. So stay tuned for the next one. See ya.